Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. Today I'm discussing 3 films from the Criterion Collection, all in black and white, and I didn't really know how to group these other than to say that they were just really cool, really neat artistically. I love how they use black and white, the characters, everything about it is just really cool and neat and fun and exciting, and I get to bring out the Bergman box, which, hint, hint, I also get to bring out my Fellini box. Anytime I can talk about these, I really love to do that. But this one isn't in either of those. This is a Godard film. This is called Masculin Feminin. Just going to use the English title there. And what is it? It's like this could be called. There's a part of this where it says this could be called The Children of Coca-Cola and Marx. And I think for a lesser filmmaker that might be kind of pretentious, but it works perfectly here. It contrasts sort of the immaturity of these young characters who are learning to interact and date with some of the high ideals that they hold and ideologies. The back of the disc cover here says French New Wave icon Jean-Pierre Léaud stars as Paul. He's an intellectual. He's trying to forge a relationship with Madeleine, who I think was a pop star or something. In the film she was, but I don't know the history there completely. And in that process, there are a few other friends that they interact with, and it becomes this celebration of youth and some of the inherent contradictions some of these young people find themselves in. You'll read about this, and some people might call it postmodern, and it feels like that all the way through, even with some of the black comedy that you might see with violent bits, in my opinion. There's lots of leftist thought in here. You'll see plenty of references to different like cultural icons and Vietnam. There's a really specific neat scene where some of the young people are protesting the Vietnam War. But to me, that part of the film is kind of second to what this film is really about. Now, this is just my interpretation. To me, the film is about stumbling and growing as you're young and trying to learn how to embrace, the human experience and those around you, and how to form friendships and how to date and how not to date, and these things that we all go through at some point or another. And it kind of, there's some point, I think, in your 20s that all of us hit, and in our 30s and on, right, where we feel a grave sense of loneliness, which more or less is a theme in all 3 of these films. There's an example of kind of what I'm talking about with all of these ideas, where, our protagonist, Paul, he's in bed and he's just kind of relaxing, trying to go to sleep, and his girlfriend's there because he gets this girlfriend in this film who I just talked about, and she's kind of lying down trying to go to sleep, and then the girlfriend's friend, who's a woman, is there too. And they're just kind of all lying there trying to fall asleep. And there's nothing particularly sensual about it. It's just like, it's almost like they're scared to be alone, and to be separated from each other. Too much quiet might lead to too much introspection. I don't know. Paul is not the best guy. He can be very, for someone who I think fancies himself as being forward-thinking, he can be kind of sexist and rude, but there's some delightful interactions with the woman he ends up seeing, like where he's almost like interviewing her, and they're having this long, awkward conversation while she's playing with her hair and adjusting her hair. And one thing I really love about Godard, not just in this film, and a lot of his films, is it's sort of embarrassing to watch. You see these 2 people flirting and interacting, and it's long and it's kind of drawn out, and it's something that if you were in the room with 2 of your friends watching, it would be like really cringy to you. But it's also kind of endearing and charming, and the whole film is just exceptionally well shot. I've thought this before, and I definitely thought this in this film. This director makes a cup of coffee in a diner a cinematic experience. I don't know how. I don't have the film knowledge to explain that. That's why I'm not a legendary director like this one is. And I think it's a timeless movie, even though it has all these different pop culture references and so forth. I really love it, and I do think you should check it out, and you will, I think, feel that breezy, cool, youthful feeling. On to something a little bit more depressing, because this isn't that depressing. Not really. I mean, not as much as some of his films. It's mostly hopeful. On to something depressing, kind of depressing. So if you have the Bergman pack, and I've got the box here, this image is probably one of the best that could have been chosen. And this image belongs to the opening of a film called Persona. And there's this boy kind of looking at this picture that might be his mother or some other woman. And it's the opening of really abstract, kind of experimental sort of narration, where we see these various images and we don't know what they're all implying, but they look cool. And long story short with that, the film Persona, it's about these two women, and they're going to go, one of them's supposed to be like a nurse, and the other one's an actress, played by Liv Ullmann. And she's not speaking. She's gone into this, probably self-calls not speak, she's mute, she's not saying anything. And their interaction with each other in this beautiful seaside coast is just so extraordinary. The photography in this film. And a lot of the film is trying to figure out their interaction together. I mean, pieces of this, for those of you that have followed my David Lynch content, certainly this had to have had, someone tell me if I'm wrong, but it had to have had some kind of an influence on Mulholland Drive. I mean, there's similarities there all over the place. It's a film that can be very confessional. It can be very spiritual. Even the shots, like there's a shot where Liv Ullmann is, or someone like her. This film can get kind of abstract, but there's a Liv Ullmann-esque figure walking into a room where B.B. Anderson's character might be sleeping as this nurse, and it feels like something out of, I don't know, like Tarkovsky and Andrei Rublev. It's very otherworldly, and I love it. Love the photography in this one. Give you a little bit more of an idea. This Bergman pack, like this big booklet, is so awesome, and it had a really cool paragraph here I wanted to talk about. That kind of gives you an idea. So you can see here, this is 157, 156, kind of like I think this is the scene where that's probably Liv Ullmann is watching a clip about Vietnam, and it's where someone burns himself to death. And on 157 it says that Persona is instantly recognizable thanks to two shots that have become its emblems. And the first was what I discussed, a boy touching a woman's face on a giant screen, and the two women looking at each other and us across an imaginary mirror. Defining images for this film, they also stand for an idea of the cinema, and that's kind of also part of what I took away from it. In fact, for two distinct but complementary metaphors of what cinema is. A portal, a window, a passage you can enter or almost touch, and a mirror, a reflection, a prism that gives you back only what you project onto it. And there is this duality in this, the word doppelganger almost comes to mind. Like there's like chameleon kind of effect. It's almost horror in a way. It's like you don't really, you start not being able to understand completely the reality around you of these two women, like something like Mirror by Tarkovsky does and how he plays with reality. Like it's impossible to understand this film completely. And I think the filmmaker has said that. I've listened to Liv Ullmann in one of her interviews in Criterion. I was listening to her talk about it and how extraordinary he was with blocking and how that sort of builds the visual imagery necessary to help communicate the ideas, and how she trusted that, and how he could fix the acting if the blocking was correct, and then all of that plays together. It is just a masterpiece, absolutely. It's a film again that you should feel first and understand second. The soft lighting even brings you into this otherworldly experience, and I just love it. I've seen it about 1.5 times now. I wasn't able to get through every piece of it again on the rewatch, but I really want to see it again and again, and I think this will be one of my favorite Bergmans over time. So, if that sounded like I didn't know how to explain it, that's because I didn't. How do you explain the work of a true master? I don't know. I just want you to see it. That's why I'm making the video. Finally, a film that I also love. Fellini, I mean, he was like a gateway for me, into films when I was younger, and into, foreign and just different things. And I think my first Fellini was La Dolce Vita or La Strada. I always forget which one. But I finally got down to see I Vitelloni. I'd seen parts of it. I'd never seen the whole thing. And it's in this box here. You can get it. I think they might sell it individually in the Criterion. But this story is of 5 young men. And the main part of the story is about Fausto, who's this womanizer, and he gets this girl pregnant really early on in the story named Sandra. And in the opening shots, she's like winning this award, and it's this clever scene, where there's like this lightning that sort of in the rain sort of storms these people out of her precious moment, and she's sort of passed out or something. It's a real memorable scene. I've seen it a few different times. Really love it. Love the opening, and in fact, parts of the opening Scorsese used again in Goodfellas when he's introducing all the people at the bar. I think one of them is like Fat Andy. That whole piece is like from I Vitelloni. I didn't know that until I was looking up more stuff about this. But these different guys, they all have their different thing. One really wants to be like a playwright. One, there's one guy that's kind of like the moral compass of the film. Meraldo, and his story is one of the best in the film, especially toward the end. But when I was watching this, and there's a wedding early on, and a beautiful wedding, and someone sings Ave Maria. It's just really just beautiful to listen to. I was reminded when I was younger, I had a group of friends. One of them got married. We went out of town, and I was riding with my parents in their van. I'm in my 20s, and I remember watching on a laptop. We were watching Casablanca for the first time on this, of all things, the first time on a laptop going to this wedding. And I remember some lake we were at, or some ocean or something. We're all standing there by the water, wondering what to do with our lives. And we go to the wedding, and there's like a hole from a bullet hole in the old church. And it felt so much like this film. These young guys just kind of lost, trying to figure out what to do with their lives. Some of them more selfish than others. There's idle chatter from these guys in this pool room. It almost sounds like something from Clerks, maybe. That film in black and white, but Mean Streets, the Scorsese film. I'm looking right at my Scorsese comic book over there as I'm talking about this. The pool scene had to have had some inspiration from that scene. There's a really good, vibrant party scene, and the camera moves every which way to make it dizzying. And in a sort, again, Goodfellas, Karen talking about the room being dizzy. It kind of had that effect that it does in that film. It almost reminded me a little bit of that really obscene scene in Babylon, which is a newer film, which I liked. There's, the street humor. It really comes through. The authenticity of the conversation. And Scorsese talked about that as well, and part of why he liked it. And watching, the only thing, I don't know, Fausto's character, I feel like gets off the hook a little bit for some of his misdeeds, because he's an awful person in this film. He's terrible to his wife. He constantly takes advantage of those around him. There is some satisfaction to how his arc plays out in one really good scene with his father in the end, but I did feel like just maybe a tad he was off the hook. I don't know. Very small criticism of the film, but I do like the last ending scene. I do think the scene with his friend Moralo, who like I said, is the moral center of the film. I think that's really good stuff. And Fellini, as much as anyone else, understood how to authentically tell a story about the human experience through visuals, through clever dialogue. And I think it really belongs on this list. And I wanted to talk to you about these 3 films today to give you some ideas of great black and white films that I think are really, really cool. Really good time. If you like the video and you want to give me a thumbs up, I'd appreciate that. It helps grow the channel. What is your pick for a cool black and white film in the Criterion Collection? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't to Cody in the Cinema.